Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and as always, before the start of the video, I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you for that and have a blessed day. There are a lot of interesting developments on the front lines, and I will touch Bakhmut first and then let's move around to the other ones. Although Ukrainians were continuously attacking in the direction of Klishchiivka, across the canal and nearly established positions here as well as from Ivanivske, in attempt to capture the remaining Russian stronghold here, recent reports suggest Ukrainians were unable to do so, and Russians kept all of their positions intact. On the north flank of Bakhmut, Ukrainians were assaulting in the direction of Berkhivka and Yagodne. Those attacks were also repelled by the Russian forces. Now, it is also important to note that some sources are already claiming that Russians left the settlement. However, without capturing this strategic trench line network, it is surely impossible to capture Klishchiivka. So I am sure as soon as we are going to hear of Ukrainians capturing this place entirely, then we can speculate about Klishchiivka being at least in the gray zone. Russians still do have positions in front of Klishchiivka, and the Ukrainians will have a hard time entering the settlement, although at this point they will have dominating high ground. Generally, situation in the whole Bakhmut sector is developing, as you can see. Ukrainians are pushing in the general attempt to encircle the city. Perhaps they don't want to enter another meat grinder within its now destroyed but still capable of providing defense walls. At this point, I'm not sure whether Russians will fight to the death within the city itself or will retreat. Russian army is not particularly known for their defense of cities. I am, of course, referring to Kherson, that was left by Russians without a fight, but perhaps Bakhmut will be different. From Bakhmut, let's move to the settlement of Spirne or Sporne. Interestingly enough, if you translate word Sporne, you will end up with the word contested. So, as much as the settlement is contested, the battle for it is still raging on, with Russians now changing their general approach. With attempts to capture the city straight on, they started advancing to its flanks, so here in the direction of Avdiivka and here across the open fields, in the attempts to partially encircle Spirne and force Ukrainians to retreat to a better suited positions. Then from here let's move to the Serebriansky forest, where Russians continued their offensive operations in the general direction of Zarechne and Torske. They were advancing within the Serebryansky forest itself, as well as from Dibrova, and from this salient, they were striking and assaulting Ukrainian positions that are located in this small pocket. As a result of that, relative Russian success is reported. Russians were able to penetrate deep into Ukrainian defensive lines, and as recent report suggests, Ukrainians were forced to step back, giving Russians some of the territories. In fact, this territorial change is being confirmed by pro-Ukrainian map. If we move here, so this was the situation of yesterday, and this is the situation of today. If even Ukrainian sources are agreeing to this territorial change, then for sure Russians have advanced here. Not that I'm using this map for any clarification whatsoever. Ukrainians here are not defending passively as well. They are counter-attacking Russians to the best of their abilities in attempt to prolong or even stop Russian advancements. It would seem they are more successful here in the Serebryansky forest, as trees and foliage provide them with much needed cover while defending. However, in the open fields, Ukrainian defense slowly giving in to the Russian pressure. Then from Serebryansky forest, let's quickly visit settlement of Novoselivske. If you remember, a few days ago I reported that Russians became extremely active on this front line as well. They were able to advance and capture the train station as well as first street of the settlement. It has been reported that in the last 24 hours, Russian forces continued storming operation in the direction of Berestove and through these forest lines, with an attempt to operationally encircle Novoselivske and capture the settlement. Once again, the settlement is located on the high grounds here, and with capture of the settlement, Russians will acquire a much needed bridgehead if they wished to advance in the general direction of Berestove and Stelmachivka. Then from here let's visit Avdiivka. Here situation is such. Ukrainian forces do have initiative here, as they are continuously attacking in the direction of Vadiane and Apitne, however without any success, as well as in the direction of Veselye. Kamyanka, and Krasnogorovka. Russians are not sitting here idly either, as they counter-attack Ukrainians in attempt to minimize damage done by the Ukrainian advancements. As recent reports suggest, there were no territorial changes on this front line. However, the intensity of fighting here is slowly building up. Here is a video of Russians shooting Ukrainian positions located in the forest with TOS-1 Солнцепек. Limited Russian attacks were recorded in the direction of Pervomayske and Novoselivske. However, these attacks were unsuccessful. Then from here let's visit settlement of Mariinka. Some people were requesting some news from the settlement. However, unfortunately for some, although Russians did attack here all throughout last weeks, in the settlement itself and in its flanks and in the direction of Pobeda, despite that, no territorial gains were reported. Then from Mariinka, let's visit the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Although fierce fighting here in the sector continues, there are no territorial changes as of right now. Ukrainians continue attacking in the direction of Priutne from Livadne, Novodarivka and Rivnopol. Without rest, they continuously smash against Russian defensive lines in front of Priutne, as well as advancing here in the general direction of Staromayorsk. There were also reported attacks from Zlotaniva towards Novodonetsk, and here in the direction of Urozhaine. It is important to note that Ukraine attacks here at least several times a day, each time using different amounts of force. For example, attacks here are much numerous than attacks here. Here, Ukrainian attacks are more limited. However, here, Russians are still able to successfully reinforce and counter-attack Ukrainians, mostly due to the fact that the biggest settlement within Vremivka tactical bridgehead is still under the Russian control and is being used as a logistical hub. With that, Russians are supplying their forces all across this front line. From here, let's move to the Orikhiv front line. Now, before I start, I have a video for you to show. It is a video of a Ukrainian soldier filming the result of their column being heavily shelled by the Russians. The result of that shelling you can see on the video. I don't think commentary here is necessary. This is generally the premise of what's happening here in the Orikhiv direction. In the last 24 hours, Ukrainian forces in a wave-like tactic were assaulting Russian positions near settlement of Nesteryanka in the direction of Kampani, in attempt to penetrate Russian defensive lines in front of Rabotina and in the direction of Novopokrovka, as well as in attempt to establish more control over the open fields in between Rabotina and Verbove. Some reports suggest some success of Ukrainian forces here, to the right side of the road as well. For some reason, it would seem that this is where Russian weak point in front of Rabotina is. At least few times already, Ukrainians were able to penetrate those defensive lines and initiate battles right in front of Rabotina. However, as recent report suggests, all attacks were successfully repelled by the Russians, and whatever breakthrough Ukrainians were able to achieve in front of Rabotina was successfully counter-attacked by the Russians, thus forcing Ukrainians to step back. With this, I end today's video. I hope it was to your liking. If it was, please consider supporting it with a like, comment, and a subscription. As always, those actions help promote this video to a wider audience, thus spreading the message, as well as motivates me to work harder. If you feel extra generous, please consider supporting me financially through Patreon. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.